All right, so now we're going to engage in some discussion and conversation. And so the question, again, is what can we do proactively about social network influences in our work? Okay, what can we do proactively about social network influences in work? And here is the process I like to use, if you're willing to go with me on this. I'd like to take a couple of minutes for everyone to just reflect on that and take some of your own notes. And because if I have you start talking to one another right now, the extroverts like me take over immediately, and then everyone else just reacts to them. So a couple minutes just to answer that question for yourself. And then at the end of that, and this is going to be what's going to require your cooperation, I'm going to have you have table conversations, but there are too many of you at each table for people to really have any airtime and to hear each other. So what I'm going to want to do, if you're willing, is to bisect each table this way, okay? So that you have half of the table in a conversation. You can pull your chairs out rather than the whole table. You're willing to go with me on that? Because I always say it, and then some people always do this, the same table, and you got 8 people. You're only going to have 10 minutes, and you're not going to get any time. Okay. So again, the question is, what can we do proactively about social network influences in our work? Okay, based on the initial presentation. And so begin now a 2-minute period of silent reflection, and please don't talk to each other during this time so everyone can concentrate. Okay, so when I say go, I'm going to ask you to bisect the table, pull your chairs out if you need to, and I'll give you about 10 minutes or so. We can give you more if you need it, and try to get everybody's voice in. There's a lot of experienced group facilitators here, and see what you can come up with. Okay, are you ready? Go. All right, so sounded like lively conversations. Hopefully, more or less, this group is still talking.
Hello.
Hello. Okay. Okay, so I'd like to hear some of the ideas that come out. So the plan is going to be to generate some ideas here, and before we finish, I'm going to give some highlights of a project that I'm working on now that reflects some of these ideas. So first, we'll be hearing from the group. So who would like to start? It can either be your own favorite idea, which your group may or may not have really liked, or it could be something that stimulated you from the group, that it was somebody else's idea. Either way. So who would like to go from the intimacy of the small group to the large group? There we go. And we have a microphone, and Denise is running around, and there she goes. Okay.
Thank you.
That was great. Yeah, I told Denise and Wendy to move. Okay, got it.
I thought that one of the memes that's about at the moment is date night, that a lot of couples use date night, and it's talked about a lot.
Yes.
So I thought that was something that we could use or build on somehow.
Yes, and date night is a good example of a positive thing.
Yeah.
Okay. It doesn't require going to a program to learn. Men tend to like it as well as women.
Yeah.
Somebody humorous said that sex may be more likely to occur after a good date night. And so it has lots of positive connotations to it. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I just have one more.
I'm sorry.
Sorry to be
No,
greedy.
you only get one. You only get one. Yeah, we may circle back around to you, but that's one of the rules I forgot to say, because otherwise somebody, like me says, oh, I have 6 really good ones, and then everyone else just goes, oh, me too. Okay, so thanks for that. Just one. So who'd like to go next? Yes?
We commented on a program from one of the groups around called Fireside Chats, and
Fireside Chats.
A mentoring kind of a program where an older person and a group of younger people gather together and just to talk about life and gather that up, and we wondered whether that could be done in a medium like Facebook.
Oh, okay, interesting.
As well as a face-to-face, but whether Facebook would be a way.
So there is something called Fireside Chats out there, yes. Yes.
Yeah, the Mormon Church makes a big deal of this, where male elders gather with teenage boys and female elders gather with teenage girls and coach them on relationships and life. And I thought maybe that could be virtual.
Yes, nowadays could be virtual, sure. Right, okay, very interesting. And again, the word chat, like date, it's not, doesn't say this sort of more heavy idea. It's a chat, not an if it was an academic, it'd be intergenerational transmission of knowledge event. Okay, and then do an acronym for it, right? So language is really important in this area. So somebody back over here?
Just one of the things we've been doing in the area I am is something called a marriage workout, and it's...
Marriage workout.
Yeah, so it's about strengthening, it's a positive base, strengthening your marriage, and doing it for us in parish centres and getting really good take-up. So it's, making the analogy to the gym. Yes,
fitness, big. So that's this idea of the fitness, that's a cultural meme out there, so playing on that. Sounds like a terrific idea. Let's go over to this side of the room is hogging all of the airtime here. So how about, well, I could see why this is a smarter group over here. Come on, let's go. So what do you have over on this side? Yep.
Thank you. Our group, we spoke a little bit about more the how, so that really your point before in terms of preventative programs, not necessarily always fitting that well in terms of counselling centres. So we talked about the ideas around bringing kind of ideas to universal services. I'm a very big fan of what's called the whole school approach programs.
The
whole school approach program. Whole school approach.
Spell that first word.
WHOLE. Whole.
Okay.
A whole school approach means that families and community agencies and schools, they partner together to work on a social and wellbeing issue. And the issue that we're running at the moment is intimacy. So that you run intimacy programs in the curriculum alongside teachers. But what you do is you also work with young people around what that knowledge and skills means to them. So getting them to really critique our work and to think about where they stand in terms of the influences around them and to make sense of that through the development of kind of a promotions tool. And then they kind of champion it through the school. So this is a program that has been quite successful where we are, and I just think that idea of us kind of walking out the door doing preventative work with universal services is a really good idea.
So let me follow up on that. It's getting outside of our buildings, right? And mainstreaming. So think about how successful the cigarette smoking stuff was with schools, okay? Because kids went home to their parents and said, "Daddy, Mommy, why are you smoking?" It's the same thing in the US with environmental things. Kids say, we should be recycling, right? And so you have an influence that comes that way. So the mainstreaming is really, and then the other thing you talked about is teaching kids to be social critics, right? To engage their social environment.
I mean, the kids that we work with, they don't really have even a concept that they're allowed to have a view about their future relationships and what they might look like. So thank you. So that's an important message. Along the way over the last summer years, my daughter got engaged and got married, and so she took premarital. I mean, how could she not? Education, and then she for a while was on this website. I don't know if it's around here, but called the knot.com, K-N-O-T, which is a bridal thing. It's very big in the States. They've got hundreds of thousands of brides on there, and then some of them graduate to the nest.com. And so that's where they share their angst about the wedding and their angst about the early relationship and the marriage and so on. But so she took premarital education herself, and
And then she paid attention to the comments on social media among the other brides-to-be about their experience. And one of the things she came out of this with is to say that we of an older generation with some good curricula and so on do not credit the younger generation with what they know about relationships. And my daughter's point is that that an older generation was less psychologically and relationally minded than this newer generation. And that when they go to one of our premarital courses and basically are talked to, it's not that we just lecture them, we engage them in conversation, but she said there isn't enough of accessing what they already know. Okay? So one of the things that you do with social norm changing is to pull out, elicit what people already know and the pressure points they feel and what their ideas are about solutions on those. And then you add stuff. You add stuff that we know from research. You add stuff that we know from professional practice. So there's an old community organizing saying, a line that goes like this: never say something that a community member could say, and never do something that a community member could do. We fill in, we don't substitute. And so I was just, when you were talking about inviting these young people to reflect on relationships in their environment, is a different way to approach it, less the kind of more top-down way that many of us were trained in. Is that making sense? It's a different, but boy, it would take a revamping. But anyway, thank you for that comment. Yes. Right. Yeah.
Following on from what you were just saying, Bill, in the couples that we have, what we could fill in a little bit is, if you want your marriages to do well, support your friends' marriages. Kind of use that, what you've been talking about this morning, to help them to appreciate and understand how important they are to each other as in their friendly group.
Yes. So what I would do with that, in light of what I was just saying, I would begin with a question: how do you think friends, relationships, and marriages influence one another? So it'd start with that, elicit that intuitive knowledge they have, and then say, by the way, there is actual research on that. Okay, so you get that approach, that more inductive approach, because then they feel like they are active contributors to this. These are all things we know. I'm talking about experiential learning, inductive learning, so it's not new to us here, but there is a generational. So one of my views, again, talking with my daughter about all of this, when I think about something like this premarital education, I think of, is there a way to think about how a generation like what we call the millennials, the 19 to 30-somethings. I'm coaching a group in Ohio who are thinking of starting a project like this. So I'm going to describe one that they have some funding to see if they could make happen. But the theme would be millennials reinventing marriage for their generation, because they are the children of the baby boomers, and we messed it up. That's the quick theme. So when you're talking about social change, you notice the language I'm using? Now, obviously, it's a bit exaggerated. Not all baby boomers have messed up marriage and so on, but baby boomers have the highest divorce rates. As baby boomers get into the post-55 and 65, our divorce rate is okay? And the millennials are the children of that generation. And one of the ways you get social change is with inspiration. Curriculum is inherently not inspiration. But if we think about how this generation could find a different way to do marriage and relationships, for example, and this was another one I got from my daughter, that if somebody of an older generation starts to suggest that friendships across the genders are dangerous things, you're dead with this generation, at least the American young, because they have opposite sex friendships and they keep them. And they, you know, it's really interesting. I'm thinking of our daughter again. So she and her husband get married. One of her ex-boyfriends is coming to town. Of course he stays with them. In my generation, are you kidding? Your spouse may have never heard the name of that ex-boyfriend or girlfriend, okay? And now they're, of course, crashing on the couch, of course. That's an example of a generational shift that where these young people have more friendship relationships and they also cohabitate in a way that early baby boomers didn't. And so what would premarital education look like for a generation? And then how would we engage some of them as leaders in the co-creation of what we do and the delivery of what we do? Okay? Because they are experts on their generation. Anybody who works with teens know you have to treat teens as experts on teen culture. Because they are. And you have to come in as a learner. And if you do that, they're certainly willing to credit you with knowing some things. This is not I'm not doing an anti-professional expertise thing here. Teens will credit it, but what do they know? What do they know? How do teens figure out a way to prevent teen pregnancy, not just adults? Okay, very stimulating stuff. So who's next? Yes?
Yeah, Bill, just I guess picking up on what Mary was saying in your comments, I think being very intentional about that in terms of things like evaluation forms. Like a lot of our evaluation forms, we have a question, would you recommend this to someone else? But actually rephrasing that or adding the question, as a result of this program, how might you help another couple strengthen their marriage, or locking in time at the end of a program, 5-10 minutes at the very end to say, look, reflecting on everything we've covered today, how might you help another couple to use some of this information and incorporate that, and really trying to, I guess, help our clients to be more intentional about helping others.
Yeah, interesting. Did anybody else talk about that theme?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? So, they want to double down on this one. Yeah. Denise is getting tired, so you need to...
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your book, the last one, that's Sticking Together When the World Pulls Us Apart.
I didn't understand anything you just said. I'm sorry.
Your book.
My book?
Yeah, the last one, the Sticking Together When the World Pulls Us Apart. Take Back Your Marriage.
Yes, right, thank you.
You might
that was a plug for my book. I don't know why I couldn't hear that. Yes. I'm really slipping. I'm really slipping.
You might have noticed in Australia, in particularly in Newcastle, New South Wales, which is book sales have gone up because, one, when anyone tells me they have a problem in their marriage, they get bought one.
Oh, good.
And I share it with our marriage.
This is the most important thing that's been shared all day here.
And I'm fairly sure it's a bit like that intention on an autopilot. I have a section in our pre-marriage program where we look at that research and we talk about what makes you autopilot, what makes you intentional, and then the friend and foe.
Yeah.
And so we ask them as the group or a couple to talk about in their immediate friends and colleagues who is a friend to their marriage and who and what, so it could be work or their interests, are foes, and they share that. And the last one is then importantly, as you leave this course, how can you be a friend to other marriages? And we ask them to name it, and then we go around and they share. And so people say, well, the last one in particular, a couple of weeks ago, this one guy said, you know what, I get it. I say I'm going to have a leave pass, and she always rolls her eyes.
Okay, a...
Leave pass for the marriage. A leave pass, allowed to go out. And she said, I find that very degrading because it's not a leave pass. This is our family. And he said, I'll stop using it. And she said, if you stop using it, Brett next door will stop using it.
And what does leave path mean?
Having freedom to go out and to go to the pub, to go to golf. Under the thumb. Yeah.
Yeah,
so
a pass.
A pass.
Could you interpret for me? I'm sorry, my ear. So a PASS. Good. Because that's one of those demeaning things for both men and women, right? It's demeaning to the man, like, she's mom, and it's demeaning to the woman, like she's some sort of dictator. Oh, that's very nice. So and then she said, if you stop using it, your friend will stop using it. And the thing is that making this intentional, going back to what was said earlier, this is inviting people to be change agents. So in this group of parents I work with around this hyper scheduling, this overschedule, this frantic busyness, what the group decided is, as we did our own cultural analysis, is this is true in the States now. If I say, so Robin, keep him busy, you're supposed to say yes. And that is a way of saying, are you doing well? Okay, are you healthy? Are you happy? Keep him busy? Oh yeah. And in fact, if you say you're extraordinarily busy, that means you're really living a great life. Okay? And so that is going along with a cultural meme, is supporting a cultural meme, just like the leave pass is supporting a cultural meme. And so what this group decided is, and I was a member of the group, we decided never again to use the word busy as a positive adjective. Okay? And so if somebody says to me, are you keeping busy? I actually, it's not that I get heavy on this, but I will say, things have been intense, but, or more than I'd like or something. But I won't just reflexively say, sure, like that's fine. That's an example of cultural resistance. Cultural resistance. So for those of you who are old enough to remember when feminism began to change language, the English language, around he was the universal he, right? In our country, the mailman, it became the postal worker. And at the beginning, some people thought this was picky with language. But in fact, if you want your daughter to grow up to feel like she could be a firefighter and not a fireman, then this was quite important. Or I remember Leah, the physicians you work with referring to the nurses as girls, and Leah would say, woman. The nurses were not referring to the male physicians as boys, right? And so these are examples of cultural resistance, okay, to intentionally not use some language like that. And then to even explain it, again, you can't come across as a scold, but at the right moment to say, actually, I don't use that. And there are a number of times I've explained to people why I don't use busy that way. Okay, and then, now you heard it from me, that's in your brain, and you may start to question the idea that busy is better. And each of you influences a lot more than 8,000 people, and something begins to spread. Okay? So other it's great ideas you're coming up with. What else has not come up?
Hi. We spoke about the need of identifying what it is that society might be wanting to create, what it is that the people are actually wanting. What are they wanting to get rid of? What are they wanting to take in? Almost like what you were mentioning earlier, that idea of being one step ahead around the integration of the community. What is it that they're wanting to move to, particularly as they're testing their own integrity, and particularly as they're testing their own sense of self as a community? And I suppose that idea of that changing smoking would be an example. So, checking in on what is it we're wanting to create, but also who are the key players, and how can we throw our seeds wider than that to be able to make those connections well.
Yeah. So do you have, I don't know if anybody in your group had some specifics. I like that. Are there some specific examples that your group came up with?
No, we talk more around, hang on, Wendy.
Yes.
Hi, one of the things I was thinking of as I've been listening to people talking too is about setting up a culture of marriage is something you work on. When you're doing pre-marriage in the couples I work with, we look at what they're good at, we look at what they invest their time into, and that's what makes them good. And so we then identify marriage as similar in that we invest time and energy, and it's the beginning process preparing for marriage.
So let me take that. Did you have more to say?
I was just going to say, so it's just the beginning of investing in, and then, then we go onto retreats, marriage retreats, or after the honeymoon. But yeah.
Okay, so let me take this idea, which is core to what those of us in relationship education do, and that is that relationships are about intentional effort and mindfulness. And what I'd like to suggest is that's not yet a powerful cultural force, okay? So the challenge is how to take something that nobody disbelieves. There's nobody who's going to disagree with that, okay? Anybody who's ever been in a relationship, right? But it hasn't penetrated, it hasn't changed. It's like after 15 or 20 years after the research on smoking came out, there's hardly anybody left who didn't buy the idea that it's bad for you, okay? And so it's not a surprise to anybody that marriage, that relationships take work and a plan, and heck, my whole book was based on this. You got to be intentional, mindful, blah blah. So, but the question would be, what would have to happen for that to be cool, as opposed to eat your spinach, okay? Work out every day. Eat, 5 servings of fresh fruits and vegetables. By the way, none of that snack food out there counted. Okay, so some of you are behind. And moderate alcohol, no smoking, exercise at least 30 minutes a day, and you're all going to sleep as I say this, right? Because you all know it's true. But how do you create something where people are drawn to this idea? Okay, that's the trick. That's the trick. In the U.S., around exercise for middle-aged and older women, Curves for Women has brought about a lot of change. Okay, a lot of change. And since there's somebody in my family who is active in Curves, I happen to know about that culture. And it is much about social connection as it is about exercise. And there are no men there, and none of the young body beautifuls, pump and iron are there either. Okay? So it's a social group for women who can come with any age and any body build and feel perfectly fine and connect with one another. In fact, in some Curves groups, women get together outside of it and have lunch together, okay? They celebrate birthdays together. So these communities spring up around something that is a very good idea, namely exercise. So the question would be about working on marriage and relationships. How would we create ways for people to get other pressure point needs? So a powerful need among humans is for social connection. And in modern industrialized societies, that has diminished. People have a hunger for social connections among peers. And how could we meet that need, and then people work on their relationships in and around it? So I've been fascinated to hear about this men's shed movement that started in Australia and is spreading around the English-speaking world. I haven't seen it in the US yet. And I got online last and was reading about it. Retirement-age men who want to feel useful and who want to connect because their social group of men was probably at work. They've lost that group. See, a lot of people experience this. You think these are your best friends in the world until you retire, and they don't know you exist anymore, okay? And a lot of the social, we know from the research on this that for couples, a lot of the social network of couples is the wife's, the woman's network, okay? So these guys, they really want to feel useful, and they want to connect. And then in and around it, there is this norm that we can actually talk to each other. We can, how you doing? And I really mean how you doing, okay? And they have this very interesting way of saying that men connect side by side, not face to face, okay? Now that's also generational. That's going to shift over time, okay? But at least of that generation, which is my generation older, absolutely true. Absolutely true. And so instead of trying to get men to act like women later on in life, thank you, appeal to and say, you should be taking care of your health better, appealing to usefulness. Those are two universal human needs: to be useful, to feel useful to one's community, family and community, and to be socially connected. If we can appeal to those, then these other messages, this other learning can be folded in there. Is that making sense? So that's just an example of how to think about this, not from the point of view of our message first, okay, like, okay, we got this thing and we can back it up, and then how do we get it into people's brains? Where are people first? Where are their pressure points? Where are people's pressure points? And two of the big ones are connection, social connection, and feeling useful. Feeling useful. So how do we design something that helps with that? Is that making sense? Okay. So one or two more, and then I'm going to tell you what I'm working on. Yeah.
I guess it's on reflection when things have become a norm. I was born in 1955, so I had children during the 80s.
Yeah.
And I went to antenatal classes with my husband. And I can't remember why, but everybody did it then.
Everybody did what?
Antenatal classes.
Prenatal,
yeah,
thank you.
Prenatal.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Not against.
Someone should stand up here. Anti, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought anti was no, I'm against natality. That's right. Okay.
So here they're always called anti.
So you did the.
And we went, and you went with your husband, and you learnt. You spent a lot of time learning all the skills.
Yes.
To do something that hopefully only took 24 hours at the most. And then you took the baby home. And then you thought, okay.
Now what?
I spent all those weeks, night after night,
yes,
watching videos and listening to experts. And I did push that baby out and a few more. And we all did it. And
yes,
well, everybody I knew did it. But I can't remember why. And of course my mother and my friend's mother said, we never had to do that and we had babies. Why do you have to do that?
So,
and so we did that, but why did we? I can't remember why I did it.
Well, I do know why.
So you'll tell me. So how?
I'm about to tell you. It became a social trend. Okay, it was the norms before were that the mother did the work. By the way, with the doctors in mid 20th century, the doctor performed it, right, mothers are sometimes just knocked out and hardly remembered it. Okay, and that fathers were in the waiting room ready to pass out cigars because you could smoke in hospitals then. Okay, but starting with groups like the Lamaze League, started by a prominent obstetrician with a bunch of women and men, started a movement to demedicalize childbirth and to make it more family-centered. When our first child was born in 1973, this had come to Connecticut where I was in graduate school. It wasn't that available around the country. So we did the classes, and I was in the labor and delivery room, and powerful experiences. So we went from, in the US, from the late 60s, early 70s, where it was rare, and it took these sort of graduate school-oriented fathers and mothers and all that, sort of the cultural, elite, if you will, to now, if a man is not willing to be there for those classes and in the room, blood, I don't care about blood, what's wrong with him? He's a wimp. So in a period of 30, 40 years, it went from he's some sort of weirdo, like voyeuristic or something, right? He doesn't belong there, to if he doesn't, he's not a man. Powerful cultural norms. Across in the US, I assume across social class groups, you got to be there. You got to be there and you have to prepare for it. So can you see, that's a good example of what we're talking about. It did not come from the research showing that that was better. It came out of a countercultural move to de-medicalize and return childbirth to the family. And then, of course, it had to be good data that's showing that, the preparing was better and that the, men in the delivery room weren't leading to bad outcomes. I mean, you have to be able to support that it wasn't making things worse. And now it's just locked in. So that's an example of social change, powerful social change. Okay. Anything else that anybody's burning to say before I take it back to something that I'm... Yes?
Yeah, maybe just the cool factor probably means it has to be Facebook, it has to be Twitter, it has to be YouTube, it has to use the technology that, anybody under 50, I guess, is using a lot these days.
Yep.
We're involved, a lot of us are involved with working with a lot of families who potentially could influence a lot of people, some of us hundreds of families, but we've never really thought about how we can use social media to send out positive messages about relationships and parenting and families.
Yes, thank you. It's about social media. So I'm going to think about how my daughter Elizabeth would respond. She would completely agree. And then I think she would say that it's how do you build social connections through social media rather than how do we send out stuff. Okay, so if we're in, and I'm not saying that's what you're saying, but often how this translates in discussion among professionals is we need a better website. Could somebody start doing Twitter for us, tweeting? Would you tweet for us? Okay, sure. That's not it, obviously, but because that is not the idea. How do you get people to fall in love with you and with what you're about? How do you get people wanting to affiliate with you? I mean, tomorrow I'm going to talk about a program for low-income fathers where men want to affiliate. They never want to leave after they finish. They love it. And they are the best recruiters and marketers because it becomes a community for them. That's what we need to be thinking about. And to do that, we have to invite people to share what they know, not just be grateful consumers of what we tell them. You see, that's the shift. That's the shift in mindset. And then the marketing takes care of itself at that point. In fact, I'm with a group now where we're developing an email list. It's this clinic. We're trying to build a community of health around the clinic. And the staff person who is in charge of the website and the email communications said, no, we shouldn't send anything out more than once a month. We should send a newsletter out once a month. Any more than that, people are going to just feel like overloaded, their inboxes. I knew that wasn't right, but I'm such as my daughter said, I'm an immigrant to that world, not a native. So I just knew it wasn't right, but I couldn't answer. So I spoke to my daughter about it, and she said, oh my goodness. She said, if people love you, they want to hear from you regularly. They want to hear from you regularly. I'm so glad to be part of this community of health. I want to hear from you. I don't want to get a long newsletter once a month. I want to know this cool thing is happening tomorrow. Make it a quick email. And then when it was really cool, 2 days later, somebody gets on the Facebook group and says, that was so cool, and here's some photos. And then look and say, oh yeah, I remember that person. Sorry I missed that one. Okay? That's what she said you create. Okay, so let me tell you about what I'm working on that puts together, for the first time in my career, my two big interests. So I have this interest in family and marriage, couple relationships, particularly the couple, because I've done community work around parenting, but the couple relationship and community. I'm trying to figure out at least one way to address this. And it's called Marital First Responders Training. And actually got the idea from an Australian program that I've been, I just revere this program, and then everybody I talk to over here, nobody knows about it. So maybe, hopefully some of you do. It's called Mental Health First Aid Training. Good. Okay. Started in the mid-90s by a husband-wife team who decided that we ought to equip communities of people with the kind of knowledge and skill that around mental health issues that we do for physical health. So that if my cough now is not just my allergy, if I was choking on something, chances are, even if it's just the group of 7 of us here, you wouldn't just watch me die while calling for professional help. You would do the Heimlich maneuver, you'd try to help clear my airway. If somebody's heart stopped, there'd be somebody here who could try CPR. Most of us know if there's a bad bleed, you put pressure on it, okay? That's community wisdom, community skill. And they decided to start a program to train lay people and others, frontline paraprofessionals, in, excuse me, noticing when a family member or friend, excuse me just a second, when a family member, friend, coworker, neighbor is having a mental health crisis, and how to respond in a way that's helpful and not harmful, and how to get them to good resources. And the thing about this is they scaled it. So 1%, within 10 years, 1% of the adult population of Australia have been trained in mental health first aid. And they've done research on it. They have 12 scientific articles on this. So they studied it right from the beginning. And I read this in, it's one of the few times I read an academic journal, and it was an American Psychologist, a big academic journal on community innovations that have research behind them, and I went, whoa, I like that. So I decided to start something called Marital First Aid, but that was trademarked. We're big into trademarking in the United States. Then my daughter, you can tell, has influenced me. She said, first aid is a little bit old-fashioned, so we came up with first responder. So we call it marital first responder, relationship first responder. You can go back and forth on those as you like. And we decided to do some baseline research. We looked at research literature, and we did some survey research on confiding patterns among adults. The research in the 80s and into the 90s showed in the US and some in Canada that, not surprisingly, people with a relationship problem turn first. Do they turn first to a marriage counselor? No. Do they turn first to a clergy person? Do they turn first to an educator? They turn to their friends, their family members, okay? And for good or ill, sometimes supported and helped, and sometimes what I call the unforced errors, so that your sister comes to you and says that she's thinking of leaving her husband, your brother-in-law, who you never liked, and you say, we never did like Harold. Never thought you should have married him. And then they're lovebirds again the next week, and you can never take that back, okay? So for good or ill. And so we did a national survey in the United States, a representative sample of American adults, to set some baseline. And we found that 73% of American adults have been a confidant to somebody bringing a problem in a marriage or long-term committed relationship. That's the term we use, marriage or long-term committed relationship. 63% have been a confidant in the last year. Excuse me. And that many of them feel some stress in that role. Okay? We have a problem checklist of problems that were brought to them, a validated checklist of issues that people have said are connected to their divorce. And lots of problems that you might imagine growing apart, annoying personal habits, lack of communication, but also thinking about divorce, affairs, violence. People bring a lot of challenges and problems to their family and friends. We ask them what kind of relationships. So I'll give you the top 4, and you can guess what the rank order is. So the relationships are a coworker, a male friend, female friend, and a sibling. Okay, those are the top 4. So who do you think? What relationship among those 4 is the top in terms of confiding? Female friend, right? And then sibling, and then male friend, and then coworker. So we also ask people what they find most helpful when they are a confider, and what they find least helpful. We oversampled African Americans because we were interested in a particular project around African Americans, and we oversampled gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender people. So we have an oversample of those, and I have doctoral students who are analyzing those patterns. Interesting one, by the way, on the LGBT sample, what we learned is that gay, lesbian people have more confiding going on with straight people than just among themselves, because there's so many, but that LGBT people are widely out there as advising the rest of the population, which is an interesting finding. Anyway, so what we have is knowledge about the grassroots, the truly frontline support that people are going for, which is not us, it's one another, okay? And we know that a not insignificant portion of those folks feel some stress or pressure, okay? So now we have social connection, we have a pressure point around what do I do? And so then we have a project, okay? And the project is called Marital First Responders, and it's designed to train natural confidants to be more confident and effective in supporting the relationships of people in their lives who already come to them. In other words, these are people they are already connected to. Now, some of you may know about marriage mentor programs often in faith community. How many have heard of marriage mentor programs? Okay. And I was a really big fan of marriage mentor programs when they first came out some years ago in the States, because I've always been interested in the further you can get to peer-to-peer help and support, the better, because of the big gap between the peer level and coming to one of our programs, particularly for couples where we want both people involved. But the mentor programs have only been successful in premarital programs when you can require young couples to meet with a seasoned couple as part of their requirement to get married in the church. The other part of marriage mentor programs, which I was so enthusiastic about, were for what we call distressed couples, where you have seasoned couples, some of whom had been through a lot of distress in their own relationship. They get trained in helping skills, and they are willing to meet with another couple who are going through struggles and give them some support. Sounds like a great idea. It hasn't worked, in the States at least, because nobody goes to them. Nobody goes to them. So you can get 10 couples trained, say, in a faith community, and then put the word out, but people don't go to them. And what I began to realize was, as I started to think about this marital first responders training, is that people open up one-to-one, not couple-to-couple in general, okay? They confide in somebody they know. They don't go with their partner to confide, right? And they certainly don't do that couple on couple. And people open up to somebody they already know and trust, not somebody who the pastor said we've put through this training program. That if people are going to open up to a stranger, they're going to open up to a professional who they have some reason to believe has some boundaries, will keep some confidences, have some training. Okay? Does that make sense? But to a lay person, I don't know. You know, somebody at the coffee hour at church. And then I began to think as we did this training, a lot of professional skills are how to establish quick rapport with a stranger and have them feel confident that they can open up with you with their struggles. That's hard. That's quite a skill. Hello, my name's Bill, you're Joan, let's sit down and talk. And 50 minutes later or whatever, you've told me your life story and your pain. Wow, that's, you know, we don't expect that of our friends, you know, and we have history with our friends. So, so what we've done is taken this group. What we do is we recruit people not on the basis that they need this, but are on the basis they are needed. So when I talked about desires for social connection and feeling useful, so the recruiting that we do, and I think I left it over there. Anyway, our flyers say, are you somebody that others confide in about their couple relationship problems? That means you're a natural confidant. Would you like to be even better? Do you sometimes feel stressed about this? Would you like to feel more confident? Would you like to be more effective in supporting the relationships of people who come to you already? You can come as a single, never married, divorced. You don't have to come with your partner. You can, it's completely optional. So in our classes, we have singles, divorced, widowed. Remember one class, 3 widows came. It's an 8-hour training. And I remember one of them saying, when we asked why people came, she said, at this stage of life, this post-retirement, there are a lot of women who are opening up to her about what it's like to live with a man at this stage. Okay? So she's a confidant largely to other women in her life. We've had divorced people who lots of people open up to, and they get to tell the story. I mean, some of them divorced and with some regrets. You know, some of them did not choose the divorce, and have no illusions to pass on about this. So we've had young people, old people, different ethnic groups. One of my favorite classes was with low-income ethnic minority men in a prison diversion program. They had drug offenses, and they could either go to prison or they could go to a drug rehab program. Now, some men actually choose prison, okay? But these guys chose the drug rehab program. And one of my graduate students was a counselor in the program. What he said, my student said, they will love this. And talk about defying all stereotypes, okay? Because here we think of men are not into, you know, this whole stereotype, men are not into relationships, which is silly, but, you know, but that stereotype. And then men are not into confiding and all that sort of stuff. Well, these guys ate it up. And what I learned was they're into each other's relationship dramas all the time. These guys have baby mamas, they got current girlfriends, they have ex-girlfriends, they have the girlfriend that cheated on them with this guy who blah, blah, blah. And they trust each other more than the women in their lives to open up to about it. Now, what was interesting is that they tend to make the same mistakes that middle-class people tend to make, men and women alike, when they get into confiding situations. They try to give advice too fast. And so what's so interesting, what they learned is exactly what everybody else is learning in this class, is to slow down And we have 7 skills we teach. And we have an acronym, LEAP and CAR. LEAP is listen, empathize, affirm, and offer perspective. LEAP, listen, empathize, affirm, and offer perspective. And CAR is the advanced skills, only for some situations. Challenge, advise, and suggest resources. Okay, LEAP and CAR. So what we found is, across these various classes we've been offering, that a common challenge for people, when somebody approaches them, they think they're supposed to give input about what the person's, what the problem is, okay? And what we know from our research, very interesting, so the research goes nicely with the curriculum. The number one thing that confiders do not like when they turn to a confidant is too much useless advice. It's the number one thing they don't like, okay? Another thing they don't like that people tend to jump to is taking sides, okay? So you poor dear, I can't believe he or she treated you that way. That's terrible. You deserve better than that. Now, I'm not talking about abuse in other situations where that might be entirely appropriate, but I'm talking about he's not supporting you with his mother who's on your case, okay? And just completely siding, what a wimp, he won't support you. What we know from the research, and also we know from everyday life, is that people, in some ways, this is part of the confiding thing. I want you to be on my side. You're my friend. I'm opening up to you. But I don't want you too much on my side, okay? Because this jerk that you say, when you give me the what a jerk response, I married this jerk. This is my jerk, okay? And I say to the people who take the workshop that none of us, we all know not to make this mistake with parenting. So you're complaining about your kid. Just impossible, blah, blah, blah. I never say, what a brat, right? I never say, what a brat. This is your brat, okay? And just like you don't really put down the mother of your partner, you know, like she's completely impossible, and yours is what? Saint Teresa, okay? But with couple relationships, people give themselves the right to do that. So what we do is give people, we help people self-assess their mistakes. We help them with these 7 skills, the LEAP and CAR skills. We talk about boundaries. We have people practice. We have people practice in the course, and we're in the process of evaluating this now to see, based on, we need, this is an era when we need evidence. My inspiration from the Mental Health First Aid Program, you need to have data that shows it works. But this is my effort now to take people who are already doing something, already doing it, okay, and who sometimes feel stressed about how well they do it with people they love, and to upgrade their skills. We have, I know you get Elle magazine in this country, so a media strategy is always a part of trying to create social change. And we want to scale this project as far as we can. So we had a journalist who was a journalist who had interviewed me before, and she's a freelancer. She makes a living off writing feature stories for magazines. I had helped her before, and so she said, what else do you have coming up? I talked about this. So she flew to Chattanooga, Tennessee to attend a training workshop, and fortunately loved it, and has a contract with Elle magazine. So in fact, this month it'll be out. The December issue, which comes out in November, I haven't seen it yet, but a feature story on this. And she said that it transformed her as a confidant and friend with her women friends. Because she was a fixer. She was a charge in, give her perspective on it, and often said things like, how stupid of him to say that or to treat you that way, okay? One of the things she emailed me several weeks after the course, as she tried out her new skills with her friends, was that she said, is one of the hidden goals here that you didn't talk about increasing intimacy between friends? I said, oh, we weren't hiding anything, but tell me more. She said she feels closer to her friends now that my term here is respecting their boundaries more. She said, now that I'm not charging in there, taking sides, telling them what I think, putting down their partner, she said, I'm feeling closer to my friends. So that's an example of a payoff. And what we want to do, by the way, I'm doing a workshop later this afternoon on this as well, drilling down more specifics. But in terms of pulling together the threads of this morning, people want to feel useful and they want to feel connected. We all do. And so finding ways for people to feel of use, that they learn something from us that can be used to help other people in their life. And that was the story you were giving. What did you learn here that you can pass on? Okay? The passing on is a fundamental desire of human beings that many of us as professionals have overlooked. Now, I certainly saw it in family, okay, to love your kids and so on. But in terms of community, of wider networks, the desire to be of use. And so people then can call themselves a marital first responder. When I learned CPR, I felt I had something to offer. I've never actually had to use it, okay? But I felt like I am a better community resource. That's why I took it. You can't do CPR in yourself. You take it to be of use to somebody else. So one of the ways to think about, this is just my current project on this, but I encourage you, as we wrap up here, to think about all the activities that you do, that I do, of people who are changed, of people who learn, who we need to invite to pass on. In the group I was with over here, I talked about a phrase that comes out of the African American civil rights movement, the small group work that people would do to try to change their consciousness and reclaim their dignity. And there needed to be boundaries in the group. There need to be confidences. But here's the expression. I learned it from an African American community leader. What's shared here stays here. What's learned here leaves here. Okay? That we all have a responsibility to take what we learned here and spread it. Okay? Even though I don't share what you said and your story that inspired me, that learning, I don't share your story, that's your story to share, but I have a responsibility to share it. And that is a principal theme of my work nowadays. For those of you who are going to be here tomorrow morning, you'll hear a variation of this same message, that we have to transcend the provider-consumer model where people come to us for self-benefit as individuals and we send them home as individuals. They all influence at least 8,000 other people. That isn't aspirational, that's real, okay? It's not wishful thinking, it's real. We all are influencers. And how do we activate people's ability to be influenced? And what I'm saying is that it appeals to these two core desires to be connected and to feel useful. So I think we're done for the morning. Thank you so much.